a broken car, and a stranger's farm. I wasn't planning to stop. The plan was simple: drive across a few states, visit a friend in a small town out west, crash in a motel for the night, and hit the road again in the morning. Everything was going fine, until I hit this stretch of road. An endless gravel path, no lights, no signs, no people. At first the car just started pulling weirdly. Then the check engine light came on. A couple minutes later, it gave a low choking sound and died. I tried to start it again. Nothing. Just a faint click. And of course, just like in the movies, no signal. Not a single bar. No service. Nothing. I sat there in the quiet, window cracked open. The warm air smelled like dust, hay, and something else. Something metallic. Unpleasant. In the distance, barely visible through the trees, I saw a house. White peeling paint, but still looked maintained. Behind it, some kind of barn, maybe a garage, and a few old sheds. A farm. I hesitated. You know that moment in horror movies where you want to yell at the screen, "Don't go in there, idiot." Yeah, that. Only this wasn't a movie. This was real, and the sun was already starting to set. I could stay in the car, or go ask for help. Wasn't much of a choice. I grabbed my backpack, slammed the door, left the hazards on, and headed toward the farm. The path led through knee-high grass and a narrow, overgrown trail. On the way I passed an old wooden post with a faded sign, Hollow Creek Farm. Didn't exactly inspire confidence, but the house looked normal, and there was a light on in the window. First impression of the farmer. I walked up to the porch and knocked. A few seconds of silence. Then footsteps. The door creaked open, and there stood a man in his 60s. Simple jeans, a plaid shirt, and a worn-out hat. His hands were stained with grease, like he'd just been working on a tractor. He smiled warmly. "Well, howdy, traveller," he said, with an accent that instantly reminded me of old southern movies. "Car breakdown?" I nodded, trying not to show how tense I felt. He glanced past me toward the road. "Yeah, not the best place to stall out. Tow truck won't get out here quick. No cell service either, I bet," I confirmed. "Well then," he chuckled. "Looks like you're stuck here till morning. But no worries, you can stay the night here till you sort things out. Got a spare room." Honestly, at that moment it sounded like salvation. He seemed surprisingly kind, even kind of homey, but there was something in his eyes. Not evil exactly. More like too calm. Like he already knew I'd say yes. I thanked him. He nodded and stepped aside, motioning me in. "Don't worry," he added with a soft smile. "It's quiet around here, maybe a little too quiet." First night on the farm. The farmer showed me to a room on the second floor of the old house. Nothing fancy. A simple bed, a nightstand, and a window that looked out onto endless fields. It was clean, but something about it felt untouched. Like no one had lived there in years. There was a musty smell. Dust and something else. Older. He wished me a good night with a friendly smile. "Quiet around here at night. You'll sleep like a baby with all this fresh air." I wanted to believe that. But once night fell, something kept me from relaxing. Too quiet. No crickets, no wind. Just stillness, Hemia. Heavy and unnatural. Even the house didn't creak, not like old houses usually do. Then, close to midnight, it began. A scraping sound. Somewhere below me. Not loud but steady. Like nails dragging across wood. Slow and deliberate. I froze, listened. Again. Scratch. 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 A thought hit me. Are you really alone in this house? The next morning I asked the farmer, trying to make it sound like a joke so I wouldn't seem paranoid. "Hey, you wouldn't happen to have something scratching around the floors at night, would you?" He didn't even blink. "Ah, that's just the chickens," he said, turning away. "They get rowdy sometimes, run across the old boards, makes a racket. Only, chickens don't move that slowly, and chickens don't sound like someone crawling on their elbows." I didn't say that out loud, but something in me tightened. It wasn't full-on fear yet, more like a creeping unease, like I'd stepped into a place with its own rules. And I didn't know them yet. The farmer clearly didn't want to talk about the noises. He looked away, changed the subject quickly, and invited me to breakfast. "Best eggs in the county, fresh from the coop this morning," he said with that same warm smile. But that sound, it stuck in my memory. Scratch, scratch, scratch. During breakfast, I looked around the house. Old black and white photos lined the walls. Folks in straw hats, handshakes, tractors. It all looked too perfect, like a scene from a movie. Not a single photo of the farmer when he was younger. Not one candid moment. Everything felt staged. Then I heard a thud from the barn. Low, heavy, like something large being moved. "Just tools," he waved off. "Got some organising to do out there." I was pretty sure he lived alone. Or at least, he was supposed to. So who was out there, and why did it sound, last night, like those noises were coming from below? From a basement that shouldn't exist. Something told me. I might not survive another night like that one. The forbidden door in the barn. By morning, the sun had dried the grass and cast long beams of light through the old barn windows. That's when I decided to take a look around. The farmer had apparently taken off on his tractor. He often said he was neck-deep in chores, and I figured this was my best chance. Curiosity has always been a weakness of mine, especially when something feels too hidden. The barn stood a little way off from the main house, a huge structure made of rusted metal, worn down by time. Ivy and tangled vines hung from its edges, as if nature itself was trying to bury it. As I walked closer, I was hit by a strong smell, damp, metallic, like a forgotten basement. That's when I saw it, the locked door. It was slightly lower than the main entrance, tucked off to the side, almost invisible, half covered by a sheet of loose tin. A padlock hung on it, old and rusty, but not too old. Someone had clearly been maintaining it. I didn't try to open it. I just stood there for a moment and listened. And weirdly, I could have sworn something moved inside, deep within, very faint, barely a whisper of a sound. That's when a voice startled me from behind. "Oh, buddy, that's not a good place for a stroll. Dangerous in there." I jumped. The farmer was just a few steps away, smiling. But that smile didn't feel as warm anymore. "That's an old storage shed," he said. "Roof's rotted through. I don't go in there myself. Best not to poke around, all right?" I nodded, mumbled something like, "Got it, won't happen again." But I noticed something. He never looked at the door. He was watching me, gauging how curious I really was. And somehow I knew he was already certain I'd go back. Strange finds in the yard. It was around midday when I decided to walk around the back of the house, where the overgrown garden bed stretched out beneath tall, tangled weeds. The air felt thicker back there, heavier than anywhere else on the farm. It smelled of damp earth and something rotten, like the land hadn't been touched in years. I stumbled upon an old compost pit, lazily covered with a sagging wire mesh. A few branches and leaves were tossed on top, but the whole setup looked suspicious, like someone tried to hide it, not use it. And that's where I saw the items. First, a boot, nearly rotted through, with the sole half detached. Then, a torn piece of a jacket, the fabric frayed and ripped like it had been dragged across the ground. Something shiny caught my eye nearby. I picked it up. A photo, an old rain-washed photograph. 3 people, a man, a woman, and what looked like a teenager, standing in front of a pickup truck. I didn't recognise any of them, not a single face. But the photo was here, on this farm. I crouched down and started brushing through the debris. More photos scattered in the grass and dirt. Each one showed different people, none of them familiar, and all the photos were torn at the edges, as if someone didn't want to keep them, but couldn't fully let them go either. Something clicked in my mind. Too many coincidences. Too much abandoned stuff lying around. And all of it looked like it had been dumped in a hurry, or like someone was trying to get rid of it. And the farmer, he hadn't once mentioned a family. No friends, no farmhands. But these photos, they showed dozens of different faces. I slipped one of the photos into my pocket. I didn't know why, just in case. Something about this farm was starting to feel very, very wrong. The journal in the guest room. I returned to the guest room closer to evening, mostly just to sit, to think, to process what I'd seen near the compost pit. I didn't have a clear purpose, but something inside me said, stay alert. On the nightstand beside the bed, I noticed an old notebook, leather cover, worn down by time. It wasn't hidden, just lying there like it had been left out on purpose. I picked it up without thinking, curiosity taking over. The first few pages were blank. Then, lists started appearing. Names, dates. At first it seemed innocent. Maybe a guest log, people who'd stayed here before me. But with every new line it became stranger. For example, Martha S., March 6th. Left in the morning. Didn't say goodbye. Greg, November 9th. Didn't wake up. Alice V., 26th of April. Left, but car was never found. My fingers went cold. Every page had strange, dry notes scribbled in the margins, some crossed out, some circled. And then on the very last page, I saw my name. Archie, 03.21, stayed the night. Today's date. I never told him my name, not even as a joke. I hadn't said when I arrived. I hadn't planned to stay. But there it was, neatly written. And underneath it, a blank space, waiting for the next line, a comment, a fate. I closed the journal slowly, quietly placing it back where I'd found it. Now I was sure. Something about this farm wasn't just strange. Someone here was keeping track of lives. And apparently, I was already on the list. The farmer in the hallway at night. The night was stifling. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours, unable to sleep. My mind racing with thoughts of the journal, the items by the compost pit, the sounds from beneath the floor. None of it felt like a coincidence anymore. It felt like I'd stepped into something I wasn't supposed to. And now, there was no easy way out. At some point I must have dozed off. But I woke to the sound of a faint creak, barely audible. But in this silence it felt terrifyingly loud. I held my breath. There it was again. Slowly I sat up in bed and looked toward the door. It was ajar. I didn't remember leaving it that way. And then, something moved in the hallway. I got up carefully, quietly, and peeked out the door. The farmer. He was standing there, just standing, in complete darkness, right in the middle of the hallway, directly outside my door. He wasn't moving, not pacing, not pretending to look for something, just staring at one fixed point. Maybe the wall, or maybe directly at my door. His face wasn't the warm, smiling expression I saw during the day. It was blank, completely lifeless. There was nothing in his eyes, no purpose, no thought, like he was sleepwalking with his eyes open, all waiting for some kind of signal. I froze, barely breathing. Then he turned, suddenly mechanically, and walked back into the shadows. I shut the door, slowly backed away, and sat on the edge of the bed, pulse hammering. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, because now I knew no one sleeps in that house. The escape plan. I didn't feel rested that morning. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, and my heart was still pounding from what I saw last night. The image of the farmer standing in the hallway had carved itself into my mind. I no longer had any doubts. Something was very wrong here, and I needed to get out as soon as possible. I played it cool, ate breakfast, chatted with the farmer. He was once again the kindest man in the world, smiling, polite, asking if I slept well. Tow truck should be here soon, he said without meeting my eyes. But I knew now. The truck wasn't coming. He never called anyone. He never planned to let me go. First attempt. The door. Late that evening, I gathered what little I had and made my move. I quietly approached the front door and tested the handle. Locked. I went to the kitchen, tried the back door. Same result. Every door was locked from the inside. All of them. It was like the whole house turned into a trap after dark. No keys anywhere. Second attempt. The windows, I checked the windows. Every single one was latched tight. One of them, from the outside. That meant I was already locked in. I tiptoed through the house, careful not to make noise, and the more I checked, the clearer it became. I wasn't a guest. I was part of someone's plan. And the car. The next morning, I made an excuse to get some air and headed for my car. Everything looked normal under the hood, except now the wires had been neatly cut. I wasn't counting on coincidence anymore. Nothing here was an accident. This farmer wasn't just eccentric, he was keeping me here. The only question was, why? I closed the hood gently, stood up like nothing was wrong. The farmer was on the porch, smiling, hands in his pockets, watching me like he knew exactly what I'd just discovered. "Trouble starting it," he called cheerfully, a little too confidently. I nodded, trying to keep my face blank. "Might be the battery. I'll take another look later." He nodded back, still wearing that warm, unsettling smile, and turned to walk back inside. And in that moment, I didn't feel fear. I felt time, like it was running out. I started searching for ways out. Not physical ones. Ideas. It had to look accidental. Natural. If I bolted, he'd know. I watched him, studied his patterns. When he left, how long he stayed out, how often he checked the doors, where he walked, how he moved, where a key might be hidden, or at least something heavy, in case I had to defend myself. I went back to the barn. The door was still locked, but now I looked at it differently. I knew something was inside. Something he was hiding. Something worse than the truth. The plan began to form. In the morning, distract him. During the day, find something to open the barn. At night, get out. Or at least find what he's hiding. Only one thing scared me. It felt like he knew. Like he was curious how long I could last. The barn was open that morning, felt too calm. The farmer, as usual, served coffee, made small talk about the weather, smiling like nothing was wrong. As if everything that happened, or I thought happened, was just in my head. But when he stepped out, I noticed it. The barn door. It wasn't locked anymore. Just a crack. Narrow but noticeable. Like someone had forgotten to close it. Or left it open on purpose. I stood and stared, hesitant to go closer. My heart was pounding in my chest. Every instinct screamed, "Don't go in." But my legs weren't listening. I stepped inside. The barn was much larger than it seemed from outside. Dusty, echoing, filled with the scent of old wood and rust. And at the far end, a hatch, metal, with a handle, slightly ajar. There was a staircase, leading down, into darkness. I found a flashlight on a shelf near the wall. I don't know why, but it was there, as if someone had placed it, waiting for me. I started to descend. Every step rang in my ears like thunder. The metal groaned, the air grew heavier. And then I was below, concrete walls, damp, cold. But that wasn't the worst part. The walls were covered. Names, hundreds, maybe thousands, different handwritings, some just initials. Between the names, handprints, finger marks, pressed deep into the concrete, as if people had tried to climb out. And scratches, nail marks, boot marks. People had clawed at the walls, fought, screamed. I could feel it, even though the space was silent now. In one corner, nearly faded. His smile is the last thing you see. I stumbled back, and in that moment, above me, I heard the soft creak of a door. He's watching. I froze in place. My legs barely held me, and my heartbeat pounded so loud I was sure the entire farm could hear it. I turned off the flashlight, pressed myself against the damp concrete wall, and held my breath. A creak came from above. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate, began descending the stairs, one at a time. The metal groaned under the weight. It was him, the farmer, the same one with the friendly smile. But now he wasn't talking about the weather or offering me coffee. In the dark without a light, he walked down like he knew every step by heart. I crouched behind a concrete beam, barely breathing. He stopped nearby. I could hear his breathing, raspy, like someone who talks to himself a little too much. And then he spoke, quietly, calmly, like it was a ritual. "We've got a new one today." A shiver shot down my spine. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the darkness, as if someone, or something under off, was there. "Young, strong," he continued. "He'll last a while." A long pause. He exhaled, almost with pleasure. "He doesn't know yet, but he will soon." I clenched my flashlight so hard it hurt. Every part of me screamed, "Run!" But I knew if I moved, he'd hear. He stood in the centre of that underground room, surrounded by names, handprints, and the echo of fear, just watching the void, or whatever I couldn't see. He stood there for a minute, maybe two, but it felt like an eternity. The basement was damp, earthy, rust-scented, and something else. Something sweet and heavy. The smell of trapped time. I didn't move. Not an inch. Not even my gaze shifted. I just watched from the corner of my eye as his silhouette tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. Then he crouched closer to the floor. "I'll leave you food. You remember how to handle them, don't you?" He placed something on the ground, I couldn't see what. Just heard the metallic clink, like setting down a bowl for a beast. Or a person. And then he said something I will never forget. "Let's try not to ruin this one too fast. He's a good one." My breath caught in my throat. I understood. I wasn't the first. I wasn't supposed to be here. He turned and walked back up the stairs. No lights, no more words. Just vanished. And as soon as his footsteps faded upstairs, a new sound came from the dark. Not a voice, not a footstep. Something stirred, like something had just realised its new one had arrived. I couldn't stay down there any longer. The escape. I climbed back up, not even remembering how. Everything inside me was shaking. My body didn't feel like mine anymore. Just one thought burned in my head. Get out. Now I snuck back into the guest room. I wanted to grab my things, but something was off. The desk drawer was slightly open. I knew I hadn't touched it. Inside was an old, dusty black flip phone. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up, but there was no signal. Not a single bar. Next to it, a folded map, crumpled, torn at the edges. It showed the farm, the road, and several small X's marked across it, like someone had been tracking locations. One of the X's, right where my car had broken down. The others, scattered along the highway. Stains on the paper looked like old fingerprints. Someone had held onto this map for a long time. I realised someone else had tried to escape before me. The house was too quiet. I knew if I opened the front door, he'd hear me. Then I noticed the air vent, right beneath the desk. Old, rusted. I pried it open with the letter opener. The tunnel was tight, but I squeezed in. I crawled through darkness, scraping my elbows, clutching the phone and map. The air was thick, but I could feel a breeze coming from ahead. Then, a sliver of light. The exit was just behind the shed. I pulled myself out. Filthy, bleeding, covered in dust. But alive. The field ahead stretched wide, black, swaying in the wind. But I ran. No plan, no hesitation. Just running. Through weeds, tall grass, mud, holes. My heart was pounding like crazy. And then, the road. The highway. I stumbled onto the shoulder and collapsed, raising my arms as I saw headlights in the distance. A truck stopped. I was saved, or at least I thought so. But the truck driver was older, tired-looking, with sharp, serious eyes. He helped me into the cab, gave me water, wrapped me in a blanket. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't work. My words tangled, my hands shook. He just nodded, didn't interrupt. "You came from the farm?" he asked quietly. I nodded. His expression changed, tense, cautious. "The old house with the big barn?" he asked again. I nodded once more. He sighed deeply, then whispered, "You're not the first." I froze. I wanted to ask. What did he mean? What did he know? But he started the engine and added, "We've tried looking for the people who vanish out there, but there's never any proof. And every survivor, they all say the same things. Names, blood, locked doors." I was stunned. He knew it all. "Why doesn't anyone do anything?" I croaked. The answer was too simple. Because the farmer's never the same. I didn't understand. He turned to me and said, "The house and barn have been there. A long time. Sometimes nobody drives past for weeks, but eventually someone always does. And every time the farmer answers the door, smiles, offers tea." "The police?" I asked. He looks me dead in the eyes. Are you sure they haven't been there too? My skin crawled. I didn't know what to say. I just sat and stared into the darkness beyond the truck's window. We drove in silence, for hours, and somewhere along the way, I realised I got out, but not everything left with me. The dreams come every night. Mirrors distort my reflection. When I walk past barns or old houses, I feel his eyes on me, because he saw me, and I saw him, and we both remember. Now I know this place can't be forgotten. My story made it to the local news. They ran segments titled "Escape from the Farm," talked about the disappearances, the strange discovery under the barn. I told them everything I remembered. Not everyone believed me, of course, but some just listened and nodded like they knew something too. A week later, the farm burned down, to the ground. No one could explain the fire. They said it was faulty wiring, except the barn had no electricity. The farmer was never found. Not then. Not ever. No name, no ID, no records. As if he never existed. As if he was the place. As if the farm chooses who becomes the next owner. I tried to move on. I changed my number, moved to a new state, started over. But sometimes, when I'm driving through long, empty highways, when the sky turns too grey, when I see a barn in the distance, I remember the field, and I see someone standing in it, perfectly still, like part of the landscape, sometimes holding a shovel, sometimes a flashlight, sometimes just waving at me. That smile, the same one. And in that moment, I understand. It's not over. It's just waiting for the next one to take the wrong turn. And the scariest part is, sometimes I think he's not waving at me. He's waving me back. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new creepy tales. Share your thoughts in the comments. We value your opinion. Bye for now. See you in the next video.